Today, of course, is a special Headlocks and Headphones. We have a special guest host joining me today on the show. And what I do want to say is if you do want to get involved, get in contact. We are on Facebook, Headlocks and Headphones, or headlocksandheadphones@gmail.com. However, let's open up with something very interesting. What we used to do on the radio show is we used to give you documentaries to watch. We used to try and get you them for free. So those were the ones that were on YouTube and were available without you having to spend your hard-earned money. Sometimes we have documentaries where we can't give you them for free. They're definitely worth checking out. Now, one that's been locked away for over 25 years is Sting. There is one that's coming to the WWE network, which is actually going to be behind the scenes before Sting became the Crow. If you are a fan of Sting, this is one you're definitely going to want to watch. They've deliberately kept this under wraps for years. Footage WWE bought from WCW, something that you definitely want to go out of your way to check out. Now, in addition to the free documentary, some great news for somebody. After the announcement that Becky Lynch is pregnant, we actually have a brand new second baby for Bray Wyatt and Jojo Offerman called Hyrie Von Rotunda. It's a very weird name, but we at Headlocks and Headphones would like to wish Bray Wyatt a very, very good time with the sleepless nights and, of course, the happiness that comes from having a second child. Now, you will find out during the main portion of the show that there is looking like there's going to be a call-up to the SmackDown roster this week. I'm not going to reveal who it is. You can find out in a few minutes' time. However, there is rumours of another person being added to either the Raw or SmackDown roster. Dominik Dijakovic looks like being called up very soon. One of those guys who, there's a lot of people don't see a lot in him, but he's a very talented guy. Mysterious WWE hacker is still posting videos, still trying to get his name out there. I say trying to get his name out there because we don't know who it is yet. Rumours are Xavier Woods, it could be Ali. My money's on Ali. Now, I know some people are thinking it might be CM Punk because they've dropped some hints in there that it could possibly be CM Punk. If CM Punk was returning, I don't think a hacker gimmick is something they would give him. I think they would have to give CM Punk a massive return. I don't think that's something that would happen in front of no audience. Now, here's the interesting part. If they weren't going to give CM Punk this entrance in front of no audience, then that would be a great reason for them to delay telling us who the hacker is. Now, there was rumours the hacker was going to be revealed at the Money in the Bank pay-per-view. It didn't happen. We did have the cinematic glory of the Money in the Bank match. But the one thing that I find quite interesting is that this hacker storyline isn't happening every week. It's one of those things they're trying to naturally let evolve. It's something WWE aren't very good at. They don't have patience. I think that's something that we as fans lack as well. We want to find out what the story is straight away. Whoever it is never going to live up to the hype. They never do. Hopefully, Ali gets something out of this and it's a big push for a great talent in WWE. Now, WWE have a history of hiring some of the best talent in the world. Michael Mansouri is one of the technical directors who've been behind TV production in recent years, and he is somebody that everybody thought was going to stay with the company for years. However, it looks like he's not staying with the company. He's left, and part of the reason apparently is because everybody thought he was going to take over from Kevin Dunn, the guy who has a job for life because his dad saved the WWE library. Apparently, though, the inability for him to get a promotion, because Kevin Dunn isn't ever going to leave until the day he dies, is something that has made him want to leave the company. Now, I know Jim Cornette and several other people have had issues with Kevin Dunn, but his production has been top-notch over the years in terms of making WWE that slick product that will appeal to the advertisers and TV audiences. The one problem is, I think it appeals to a certain audience, but the wrestling fans being switched off by how smooth and proper the wrestling product has become. And that's something that I talk about with the guest host on today's show. So, hello, welcome to Headlocks and Headphones. My name is Martin Anderson. For today, as you can see, I'm joined by, I'm not even sure which side you're going to be on. I'm joined by this guy. What name are you going under this time?
I think we'll go with the JJ Andrews.
Okay, I'm gonna forget, so keep me posted. Right, so this week we're gonna open with a slightly different format. Normally, what we do is the news, then we do SmackDown, Raw, AEW. But because we have a guest host with us this week, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go straight into the TV shows. And we're not going to talk about everything, because that's one of the things that pisses me right off when you watch a YouTube video where they spend 40 minutes telling you everything that happened on SmackDown. It's like, I'd be as well just watch it. So instead, I'm going to tell you some of the things, because I know you're not really keeping up to date with what happens on Raw and SmackDown. More than just seeing, if a big story pops up where somebody wins a belt or something, that kind of shows up in your world. But when it comes to SmackDown, what's really interesting is they have been doing the Sheamus and Jeff Hardy story quite well. And Sheamus has been kind of pushing the idea that Jeff Hardy's a druggie. And actually, during one match, one segment rather than a match, Sheamus actually called him a druggie. And there was proper shouting between them. So they're going down this route of playing on the demons that Jeff Hardy has. And I do want to ask you one thing about the Jeff Hardy storyline. How comfortable do you think Jeff Hardy is actually playing up to this demon character?
Jeff's obviously playing characters very, very well. I think it's been long enough in his life that he can play on something that has happened and not to affect him too much in his professional life.
You'd have to hope so.
I still think it would affect him.
You'd have to hope this is cathartic for him rather than being something that's going to damage him. Now, as he takes a sip of his Scottish national drink, one of the things that's quite interesting here is that this Intercontinental title tournament, which Jeff Hardy has went straight into, saw him beat Sheamus, which is why there's a little bit of a feud there. We did have Elias beat King Corbin, and we saw AJ Styles being drafted quietly from Raw to SmackDown, which AJ Styles has said this week he's actually happy about, because it's got him away from the demons of, we keep talking about demons, but the demons of the fact that he couldn't help the Good Brothers keep their jobs, and he feels like it's a fresh start. He's already been successful on SmackDown, and he's returning. This week on SmackDown, they had AJ Styles and Shinsuke Nakamura in the match they should have had at WrestleMania. This match, to me, was good enough to be on WrestleMania. The psychology, the storytelling, the only thing missing for them was a crowd. I think had a crowd been there, that would have been rated 4.5, 5-star easily. Now, the other thing was Daniel Bryan and Drew Gulak. Have you been following that story at all?
I know that Gulak was being trained by Daniel, but that's as far as it got.
So yeah, I think they're both kind of been meant to be learning from each other, although one's a student, one's the master. So they had Daniel Bryan versus Drew Gulak on SmackDown the other week, and it just so happened that Drew Gulak's contract expired right after the match. Drew Gulak left the WWE. For all intents and purposes, he was done. So this week he has re-signed. It was a renegotiation process where I think he wanted more money because WWE have just fired lots of people. They don't want to be giving people extra contracts. But Drew Gulak's one of the top guys, as far as I'm concerned, on SmackDown. But on one side of that Intercontinental title tournament, because of the win for Jeff Hardy and the win for Daniel Bryan, you have Daniel Bryan versus Jeff Hardy, which is on tonight's show and is going to be insane. Those two guys are going to put on a great match.
That should be a really good match. That could realistically go either way.
Yeah, and what's quite interesting is on the other side, you have Elias versus AJ Styles. Now, with AJ Styles returning to the brand, you would have to think giving the belt to him would be quite interesting. However, Elias is somebody they want to push, so it could go either way there as well. This is one of those matches, one of those tournaments where you look in and any of those four guys win that belt and you think, yeah, that tournament was done properly.
It would seem like one of these guys is going to win it, and it seems like it's a total legit thing. Like the better wrestlers have won through to the semi-finals, and one of these guys is going to win it, which I would buy 100%.
Now, I do recommend you go out of your way to check out the opening segment of this week's SmackDown, because what you had was John Morrison and The Miz in the ring. Out came Braun Strowman, and basically John Morrison, I want to say accidentally, but just that thing we used to do when we were out drinking and one of us would say something and another one suddenly gets signed up for something they didn't really agree to. as a result of comments like that, The Miz ends
No
up having
idea
a
what
match
you're
with
talking
Braun
about.
Strowman. So it's the week before you had Braun Strowman beat John Morrison. Last week it was beating The Miz. They now put on a challenge for 2 against 1. For me, though, you've got your world champion going against 2, I would say, upper mid card guys in John Morrison and The Miz. To
Well,
me, it
they're
doesn't help them.
ex-heavy champions.
Yeah, it doesn't help them. I don't think it helps Braun. I think there's a real lack of challengers on the SmackDown brand. You do have the Dolph Ziggler and Sonya Deville versus Otis and Mandy storyline, which for me is pretty weird. Um, I've never seen a woman like Mandy go for a guy like Otis in my life, unless Otis was really, really rich. I've just never seen that.
Or really, really.
Can we talk about? No, we won't talk about that. That's one of the things that for me is quite interesting. Now, I do want to talk about one thing that most people will probably throw away, which is the Forgotten Sons. That is Wesley Blake, who used to be Buddy Murphy's tag partner. It's the guy who used to be Gunner in TNA. And the third one, his name really escapes me, which I feel bad about. But 3 ex-military guys, and they're going by the Forgotten Sons gimmick, which they've already lost quite a bit on TV, which is a shame. But they cut a 50-second promo on SmackDown, and just watching them cut the promo, they look like jaded ex-soldiers. I think there's a lot of mileage in that, so I'm really excited to see where things go, especially with the news that Matt Riddle looks like he's going to be called up to SmackDown, and they've filmed something for SmackDown with Matt Riddle for this week. We don't know if it's a match or a pre-taped segment backstage, but it does look like Matt Riddle's going to be on SmackDown from now on, which for me, I'm hugely excited by. I think Matt Riddle is one of the guys that I'm most interested in seeing on WWE TV. It's one thing to see him on NXT, which is obviously a largely forgotten about show. Although we will talk about what's been happening on there in just a few minutes. Now, we're going to quickly move on to Raw because it's the next WWE show. And what we will do is we will look at the moments from Raw that were quite interesting. And then we're going to explore the pay-per-view that took place on Saturday. And of course, this week's AEW Dynamite. Now, one of the things that's quite interesting for me is the other week you had Natty come out and she lost a match and she ended up destroying Kevin Owens' set. There was quite a bit of comedy this week on Raw where Kevin Owens came out for the KO show. You had Charlotte Flair, Nia Jax, and Natalya crash Asuka's interview on the KO show. And when Natalya came out, she actually apologized to KO, and KO was like, no, it's fine, it's fine. But when Charlotte came down to the ring, as she was coming down, you could see Kevin Owens getting a little bit anxious. And Nia Jax came down, and Kevin Owens like, I can tell what's happening here. I'm out. I'm going. I'm not sticking around. That was one of those segments for me, which it went too long.
Saying that reminded me on the what was it, the A Moment of Bliss, where she was interviewing, who was it? I think it was EC3, and I think Nia Jax came out, and a couple of other girls came out, and yeah, she was just pissed about it.
I think that's one of the things with WWE just now. I think when you look at, I have to make the comparison with AEW because it's the other show as far as everybody's concerned. WWE are very good at doing segments, doing angles in the ring. AEW, I don't think are quite as good at that yet. Whereas I think AEW are better in ring than WWE are, which I think is you can't say that the talents are better, but I think in many ways the playing field they're on is different. WWE are playing to a slightly different audience where they don't get the chance to be as creative. So some of the in-ring stuff in terms of promos is very, very good. Now, one of the things we will talk about for the main event of the show is I'm loving MVP as a mouthpiece. So we'll talk about that briefly in a second. But the Iconics attacked Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross. Now, the Iconics were off TV for ages. If you saw last week's show, I actually managed to do the Iconics pose because I really like the Iconics. That's spot on, right? Yeah, I really like the Iconics. There's something there. The thing that's floating around the internet is obviously of Kayla, which is one of the iconics shouting Kayla Braxton's name out really loud, or the special where they chased Drake Maverick down the hall and Drake Maverick pretended like he didn't see them. They are very funny. But as soon as that bell rings, they can wrestle. So I'm excited for the Iconics versus Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross. I'm a little bit pissed though, because this is two girls who are from SmackDown on Raw. Yes, they're the tag champions, but this is meant to be the brand invitational where you only get to show up 4 times. So I'm assuming the brand invitational doesn't apply to champions, which it's the what we had before where people were just allowed to show up on any show they wanted, and then they forgot about the rules and just had it almost back to one brand again. The ratings are down, so they obviously have to put guys from Raw and SmackDown on the other show. I really think they have to show faith, stick with the guys because they're all good. It's for me, the more you keep mixing them up, the more damage you do.
I just think there's too many titles. Like, you've got 2 different brands. Well, you've got 3 different brands. If you're keeping NXT its own thing, fair enough. Keep your titles. Keep your NXT champion. Keep your NXT tag champions. Keep your women's champion. But with SmackDown and Raw, it's like 2 separate. It's like brother and sister. So it's like if they're swapping back and forth talent, why not just have like the Universal title and I don't know the Intercontinental title? Or put the Intercontinental all down to NXT and use the US or vice versa.
Well, they do say that they have a big plan for during the summer. What if the big plan was to actually have Drew versus Braun and create one top title? Because I think if you created one top title and Drew was in front of both audiences, you would really be able to push him. And Braun, a win for Drew over Braun would, in the eyes of a casual fan, elevate him. As far as I'm concerned, you get elevated if you beat somebody like Braun, especially when they've done a decent job of building him as champion.
Yeah. I mean, a big guy like Drew facing a bigger guy like Braun, I mean, Drew wins. Like, I mean, he's going to get so much more credit. He's going to get that in front of a crowd.
And that's one of the things that's really harmed Drew. I think there's some fans don't see him as a big star yet, and I think it's because he didn't get that moment at WrestleMania. Yeah. But I think when it happens, I think it's going to be huge. Don't expect either world title to change hands until there's a crowd. I don't think that makes any sense. But on the topic of Drew, they are pushing this angle with Bobby Lashley, which is the final segment of the show. But earlier, they had MVP call out Drew McIntyre again. And as they were talking, out comes Bobby Lashley. And you had Drew McIntyre drop MVP with a Claymore kick. A very, very well done segment. I think MVP is somebody WWE can do a lot with. Now, he's still going in the ring, and he can still go. But his ability to talk for people is really good. Now, we're both Kevin Owens fans. We appreciate the work that he does. He lost to Angel Garza, which shows how much weight they're putting behind somebody like Angel Garza. I'm a fan of Angel Garza. However, when you look at Humberto Carrillo and Angel Garza, who are in the same family, Hector Garza, who's obviously their relative, somebody who never quite made it to the top of the card in America, I think they've got high hopes for Angel Garza because he appeals to that Mexican audience without having too much of an accent. And he's also not as much of a dick as Alberto Del Rio, which isn't hard based on what he's been doing recently. Now, if you haven't seen them, I do encourage you to go on YouTube and check out the Viking Raiders versus Street Profits. So week 1 was basketball, and it was pre-taped much in the same way as the Mr. Perfect stuff was. And then week 2 was an axe throwing contest, which was just insanely funny, although quite hokey at times as well. But sometimes and then you had this week was golf, and if you've not seen the Viking Raiders dressed as golfers, then you really have to go out your way because it's so funny. But one of the things I do want to talk about...
Were they actually dressed as Chavo's character?
I've got the pictures in front of me now, and they're still wearing... It's modified, so it's got some Viking stuff on it, but they're wearing tartan. They're proper Scottish kilts. that they've got on. It's the same material, which is really cool. But we'll move on. We're going to bring back something that I want to talk about later on. So we're just going to cut it from later and mention it now. Buddy Murphy and Austin Theory are the Monday Night Messiah recruits. Austin Theory is somebody who was involved in several other companies. Great talent. I don't think he's ready yet to be elevated. But to get him out there and get him exposure is great. When Austin Theory was welcomed into the Monday Night Messiah team, the look on Buddy Murphy's face was incredible. He had just this look. I'm sure, like your brother had 100 times when you received a sweet or something for being good, and he's just expected to have been good because he's the older brother. And that was the look that Buddy had. It was like, well, wait a second. I've been doing this shit for weeks, and now he's getting hugs. He's getting all the respect. There's a great amount of
jealousy and gratification.
Yes, and I think there's going to be a lot of good stories to be told there. I can't wait to get that in front of a crowd. I think that's going to really help elevate that story. Now, Nia Jax defeated Natalya and Charlotte Flair to earn a Raw Women's title match at Backlash. The match itself was okay, but the thing that I really loved was it was almost like Asuka was on guest commentary. It was almost like she was stuck and she didn't really know what to say, so she just kept screaming for Natalya. So the second she started screaming for Natalya, I was like, well, Natalya's not winning. Clearly has to push this storyline. I mean, she had a hissy fit the other week, so they have to keep going down that route. I think when Natalya turns, because people have seen her as a good guy, good girl, good person. Are we allowed to be gendered now? I'm confused. But because they've seen her as that babyface character, when she turns and she attacks Asuka, that's going to be huge. It has to be. Now, the Street Profits actually did get a wrestling match this week against Bobby Lashley and MVP. And like I say, MVP looking really good. He's wearing the Punisher gear now. The skull that almost looks like it's dripping. It is very cool. Now, for me, I saw Street Profits live. It's hard to not get caught up in what they're doing. It's such a good act. And in the week where Shad Gaspard is being remembered, it's interesting to see that a lot of what they're doing is what Crime Time was doing. So it's a gimmick that's worked before, but this time they're trying to step away from a lot of the racial stereotypes. Not all of them, sadly, but some of them they've got rid of. They're not able to hook you up with any tickets you want. They can't get you any sneakers that you want or anything like that. But they are.
Yo, 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 yo.
Do you know what, though? I really enjoyed Crime Time. Now, I mentioned it on the show last week, so I'll mention it again. My favourite Crime Time story is one that happened to me. I was at a live show here in Aberdeen, and one of the people that we were waiting outside, when they're going to get on the bus, and one of the guys in the crowd threw his Converse trainer at Shad Gaspard. Security went mental, and Shad's like, no, don't worry. He took out a Sharpie and he signed it, but he threw it to the other side. So the person who threw it couldn't get it back. Fast forward a couple of seconds, and the other shoe went in. So JTG grabbed it, he signed it, and threw it over to the other side as well. So the person lost their shoes, and Crime Time signed them and gave them to somebody else. For me, that
is just genius.
And that was a show where John Cena and Umaga were at the show, and both of them got injured. And it's really interesting to see that nobody reports about injuries that happen on shows, and these guys that are putting their bodies on the line every week, even though, especially the ones that are doing it during the lockdown and everything that's happening. Whilst we can be critical and maybe not agree with some of the booking decisions, we have to admire the fact that these guys realistically are putting their bodies on the line. But during this situation, they're putting their lives on the line to provide us with 3 hours, 2 hours, 2 hours, and 2 hours of entertainment every week. So it's whilst we're critical of some of the performances in regards to what creative is, we have to be appreciative of the stuff they've done, especially when that last segment on Raw, which saw Bobby Lashley and Drew McIntyre actually brawling. Nothing is being mentioned so far about the fact that the last time these two guys faced each other was for the Impact World title, and Bobby Lashley won. For me, I think they have to go with that heading into this pay-per-view so we can get to see that story that Drew McIntyre might just not be good enough to beat him. So that's one of those interesting things, I think, coming into it. Now, we're going to move on. Now, I have shared the pictures with you, and last night I shared the comparison picture of the old belt, the the one that was on the Double or Nothing pay-per-view, with the version that AEW say is going to be the finished product. Now, what do you think of the new AEW TNT title?
I think it looks like a boxing belt. Like, I get like a lot of like UFC guys are coming over. There's obviously the AEW and Mike Tyson thing going on. So, I mean, I can get if they're trying to make it look like a boxing belt that way by the connection of Mike Tyson. I get it, but I mean, I'm not a fan of it.
Well, do you know what? I'm on the Facebook page of the guy who makes the belt, and he was saying, "Listen, don't take what the belt is as the final product. The belt is not finished yet. We couldn't get it plated and stuff, and that's fine." But what I've suggested is they could have worked an angle where somebody stole the belt before it was revealed, and then Cody has to chase it, and they've got that extra couple of weeks to actually reveal it. But they decided to go with what they had. They've shown the finished product, which is there's a little bit more texture to it. The TNT logo pops out a little more. Still not a fan of it. I mean, I collect belts. I love wrestling belts. I'm not a fan of it. It's not one that's going to be something that I want to buy. Although I do want to buy the world title. I think I like the women's title as well. So we will talk about that briefly. There was a pay-per-view, Double or Nothing, on Saturday. And I know you haven't seen the pay-per-view, but you've heard a few things that happened there. So let's kind of just shoot straight into it. Best Friends beat Private Party. Private Party essentially are Street Profits. I mean, it's a very similar gimmick, but Best Friends, Chuck Taylor and Trent Beretta, you might know the name Trent Beretta, who used to be in a tag team on SmackDown. We went straight into the Casino Ladder match to open the pay-per-view, which is for a future shot at the World Champion. What's quite interesting here, Darby Allin, Colt Cabana, Orange Cassidy, Joey Janela, Scorpio Sky, Kip Sabian, Jimmy Havoc with Penelope Ford, Frankie Kazarian, and Luchasaurus, all taking part in this match. Now, all of these guys have done something incredible on TV in recent weeks. All of these guys are what would traditionally be called spot monkeys, with the exception of maybe Kazarian, but he still kind of leans that way. The one that kind of was a shock, although it wasn't a shock, was the arrival of Brian Cage, the former Impact champion, and he's accompanied by Taz. So I think there is a genuine hope there that Brian Cage is going to get over as a main guy. I think they have to be very careful with how they book him. And booking him his first match, he gets a title shot. That has a risk. If that was WWE, there's a huge risk that would backfire. I think it depends how they tell that story going forward. But what
that's like taking Brock back after a while he's been away, coming back with Heyman and Brock getting a title shot like that.
Yeah, and that's
because he is.
So Brian Cage is a big guy. He's what Steve Austin used to call BMF, big motherfucker. Because Brian Cage is a big dude. He works out. He looks after himself. And here's a guy who loves the business enough that he has invested in himself. He's got a look of Wolverine about him as well. So he kind of appeals to the guys who like big wrestlers. He appeals to the guys who are a bit geeky. So Brian Cage is somebody that I think could be a top guy. Don't think he's there yet, but he will be soon. For me, and this is something that people are going to disagree with, we certainly know somebody who probably disagree with this. Match of the night, the pay-per-view, MJF versus Jungle Boy, with MJF going over. I'm sorry, but MJF is possibly the top guy in wrestling right now. In terms of promo, in-ring's probably not as good as some of the other people, but that presentation overall, MJF is probably up there. And I know I'm critical of AEW, but MJF is something they've done well. Are you a fan of MJF? Have you seen some of the stuff he's done with fans?
I've seen some of the stuff he's done with fans, like obviously showing that he's a big heel. But I've also seen him dealing with the kids and the fans. Like, he's actually a decent guy.
Yeah, I mean, he tries as best he can to live the gimmick, and that's something I think that's missing from a lot of the guys in the company, in any company, really. And some of the guys, like Michael Elgin from Ring of Honor, he tries to live the gimmick on social media, and he ended up basically not breaking down in a bad way, but he broke character last week, and he was like, "Listen, it's all for fucking show. Just calm down. Just let people tell their stories." And I think we've kind of got away from the fact that people can tell stories because we have almost constant
What
access to all these
professional wrestling should be is storytelling from the second you walk through the curtain, going out to the ring, to the second you walk back through the curtain.
Now, we did
And
discuss the
sometimes
belt.
back as well.
Yeah, no, we did discuss the belt, the TNT Championship. That was Cody Rhodes versus Lance Archer, with Arn Anderson in Cody's side and Jake Roberts in Lance Archer's side. Now, for me, I'm pissed because they worked an angle where Jake attacked Brandy, or at least there was a confrontation there. And Cody came out like a normal wrestling match. He wasn't angry. I don't know about you, but see if somebody comes after your partner and you happen to get a chance to the ring.
I will be pissed.
This is the thing. The belt might be important to you, but there's some things more important than a damn belt. And for me, that's what it should be. His dad would have almost forgotten about the belt and maybe had the referee remind him, "I'll disqualify you," and then just tell that story. And that's something that's a missed opportunity for me. They did do the Mike Tyson spot where Jake came down to try and distract, and Mike Tyson stepped up, and there was a confrontation between them, which, anytime Mike Tyson gets involved in anything on camera, you just don't know what he's going to do. So for me, that was kind of an entertaining thing to see. But Cody winning the belt, for me, Lance needed to get it. Cody needs to chase him. But, I'm sure this is to make up for the fact that he can't fight for the world title, at least not until they find a way of getting around that. But it is one of those interesting matches where I hoped Lance was going to win. I know quite a few people hoped that Cody was going to win. And now we just have to hope that they plan on doing it like a TV title, so it's going to be on TV every week. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do. Chris Statlander, who plays an alien who is lost on Earth, which is a great character. She's still growing and developing. But she beat Penelope Ford. Dustin beat Sean Spears. Dustin's managed by Randy Rhodes, which for me is weird. Now, that's not even the weirdest part of the night. For me, the weirdest part of the night, Nyla Rose losing her belt to Hikaru Shida. Now, I'm a fan of Hikaru Shida. I think she's great in the ring. But you've literally spent no time building up Nyla Rose. It means nothing. The belt is just plain hot potato. And I think Nyla could have held it till the end of the year, and you have a group of guys, girls. It sounds like I meant that. I didn't mean that. You have a group of people that are willing to step up and put their life on the line in some kind of gimmick match. And Nyla Rose loses the belt by somebody else getting pinned. Keep her strong. She is somebody that could be booked as a monster, and for all the right reasons. But they just seem to want to keep passing that belt around, which I think is a problem. John Moxley defeated Brody Lee. Again, I would have loved to have seen Brody get the win, but not get the belt there. That's one of those decisions where John Moxley doesn't need to win that. He just needs to keep the belt, leading to Brian Cage versus John Moxley. That might appeal to an AEW fan. I don't think that's going to get them extra pay-per-view buys, though.
I don't know. I think Lee's character is... It just doesn't appeal to me.
It's
like,
one of those...
See this big guy who...
Almost being the same as Bray Wyatt a little bit in WWE, but with a slightly different version, which for me is a bit lazy. But at the same time, we're getting to see how good Brody is on the mic. We're getting to see how good he is in the ring. Something we didn't get to see for a long time in WWE. I'm sure he's happy. I'm sure he's not 100% happy with creative, but he does have a bit more freedom. Now, we go into the main event of the pay-per-view, which is Matt Hardy and the Elite defeating the Inner Circle in what was basically a cinematic match. A lot of funny spots, a lot of brutal spots, and there was some broken ribs and stuff on the Dynamite before this show, so there was the thought that they were going to kind of scale things back. It was a 34-minute long segment where they ended up doing a lot of crazy shit. But I do want to talk about how they could put a drowning segment. Yes, I know it was for the Matt Hardy character, but how they could put a drowning segment on pay-per-view the week that Shad Gaspard drowned. I mean, I know some people will excuse it and say, but WWE did a weight segment at WrestleMania. Yes, 16 years after Benoit died. they shouldn't have done that because it does automatically draw your mind back to the Benoit thing, particularly when you've got, Edge in there who was Canadian and at one point quite friendly with Benoit. It does draw comparisons. But I don't understand why anybody would want to do a drowning segment the week that a former colleague had died. Jericho, Matt Hardy, and Jake Hager can all attest to being former colleagues of his. And obviously, at various levels, Kenny Omega has worked on shows with him. Nick and Matt Jackson will have worked on shows. Adam Page likely as well across the independent scene. For me, it was crass, but it shouldn't detract from what was overall a very entertaining spectacle in a massive arena, something which WWE haven't been able to replicate.
I just think the drowning segment, very bad taste. Like, okay, it was for a different character, it was for Matt's gimmick, but I mean, nah, not for me.
Now, so we're going to move on quickly to Dynamite because we are slowly running out of time here. So the card for Dynamite: SCU versus Kip Sabian and Jimmy Havoc, Joey Janela and Private Party versus Matt Hardy and the Young Bucks. Hikaru Shida had a match. Britt Baker updated on her condition, and Jon Moxley was in appearance as well. There was another confrontation between Jericho and Tyson, which, I'm a big fan of anything Tyson does, but Tyson's relevancy was over 10 years ago. So it's interesting to see that they're still going with this. But let's talk about one of the big things that actually showed up on AEW, which was FTR. Cash Wheeler and Dax Harwood showed up during the Hardys and Bucks defeat over Private Party and Joey Janela. Now, when they came out, Butcher and Blade had actually attacked the Jacksons, and it looked like FTR, the Revival, were coming out to help the Butcher and the Blade, and they twice attacked Butcher and the Blade and didn't touch the Jacksons, the Young Bucks. Now, for all of the hype, we knew they were going to AEW. I want to bring up something here. They called themselves the Revolt, which is another tag team's name, and have shown no remorse about it. So that makes them dicks. You don't steal another team's gimmick without at least going to them and saying, let's do something with this. So maybe we'll buy the name off you, or we'll send people to your site and get them to buy your merch, whatever it is. So they're a bit of dicks for that. But I think it's hilarious that they went with Cash Wheeler and Dax Harwood. They sound like gay porn stars now. They don't sound like the best tag team in the world. They sound like Dirk Diggler and Johnny Hardcock, two gay porn. I don't know if they are two porn stars. I honestly don't watch gay porn.
Delete your history now.
Well, yeah, but I just that's one of those things. They could have picked better names. I certainly think that the opening match at Dynamite was very good. When you look at some of the ratings, there was A ratings from everybody, 5-star ratings from those that don't use the letter system. So it was very good. We did see Cage get a win with Taz actually cutting a promo to express how good he is. Now, the problem for me with this is I think it's too soon to put Cage in there. If he wins, it's too soon. If he loses, it kills momentum. It's a bit like the Lance Archer thing. If he goes in and doesn't win, then you really do cause some damage. We did get an update on Britt Baker. She arrived in a wheelchair and did an interview with Tony Schiavone. Now, I'm not a massive fan of the original version of Britt Baker they had, because that first promo with Tony Schiavone was the worst promo I've ever heard. And then slowly but surely it developed. And for me, I think that first promo being bad was on purpose. So have you seen any of Britt Baker? Because she's Adam Cole's girlfriend.
No.
I would go out of your way. Her promos have massively improved. We did have Hikaru Shida get her first win on AEW as champion. Cody then issued an open challenge because that belt's going to become like the TV title. There was Tom Brady was the comparison that Cody made the long-time quarterback in the NFL, somebody that you can rely on. But it's interesting to see that Cody is going to try and be that workhorse champion, almost like his dad did. SCU versus Kip Sabian and Jimmy Havoc. I like Jimmy Havoc. If you look at one of the stills from the show, Jimmy Havoc's wearing a white suit with blood all over it.
Havoc's great live.
Yeah, I haven't seen him live, but I've got some of his merch. I'm a big fan of the stuff that he does. But Sabian and Havoc defeated the SCU, which is a huge win for Sabian and Havoc. SCU, I would put them as, if they're not the number one tag team, which probably goes to the Jacksons or the Revival or the FTR, and then I would put SCU right underneath those two teams. So they're second or third, depending on where you place everybody. There was a battle royal for the number one contender for the TNT Championship, which was won by Jungle Boy, which, Jungle Boy versus Cody Rhodes, that would be an interesting match. You'd be hoping that Cody wins. You also had an Inner Circle pep rally. They've been on a bit of a losing streak recently. So they were trying to kind of build up some momentum, which did, of course, lead to the altercation with Mike Tyson, where they reminisced about their previous altercation on Raw, where Tyson knocked him out. Because apparently Jericho said to Tyson at the time, "You're going to have to just hit me. Don't pull it. Just hit me." And apparently Jericho backstage was nervous as hell because he suddenly realized before the match, "I just told Mike Tyson to punch me. What the fuck am I doing?"
This is Mike Tyson I'm talking to. I've just told him to punch me.
Why would you do that? But that was how they ended the show. Now, what I do want to mention is NXT, because we're going to go in just a little bit. In NXT, you had Matt Riddle versus Thatcher in a special type of cage match with a platform on top. And earlier on, you mentioned it reminded you almost like the Dragon's Den style that Ken Shamrock used to do. Having seen not all of it, but just the highlights of that match, what do you think of it?
I thought it was pretty graphic for a professional wrestling show. Okay, it's NXT. These guys are pushing themselves. These guys, I would say the NXT roster is better ways than Raw and SmackDown rosters.
Definitely. And I think to see Timothy Thatcher lose teeth because of how brutal they were shows that these guys fought and evolved. They don't care about getting hurt a little bit. They don't want to be out injured, but they don't care about being out. So,
is this WWE's way of trying to get around the PG era?
Do you know what?
Trying to dip their toe back into the Attitude Era?
It would be a great way to try something, because I don't think the product's working as it is. Somebody like Drew would really get over if he had the chance to cut promos the way he does in ICW, because the fans get behind those kind of promos. If you've never seen a promo of his, go out of your way. Now, I do love the fact they fired Drake Maverick and left him in the Cruiserweight tournament, and he had a match against Kushida and Jake Atlas, and he won. I mean, for all the things, how is he winning these things? He's been fired.
He's not employed, but yet he's still winning matches.
It's a great thing to see, and I don't think Drake should stay fired. I think it's something that, they should work an angle and have Regal just say to him, "Listen, here's a contract. Just keep doing what you're doing." Even if they say to him, "Here's a contract, it's a tenth of what you had before," because that promo he did where he basically got upset about being forced to leave it was insanely good. Now, backstage, you saw Kushida, who actually dresses like Marty McFly from Back to the Future, which I absolutely love. He was congratulating Drake Maverick.
Kenny Williams from ICW, though.
Yeah, there's a real push to get these guys, to get Drake Maverick over, which I'm very happy with. Now, Damian Priest and Finn Balor have been feuding for the past few weeks. Finn Balor has accepted the challenge. Now, Finn Balor's meant to be a heel. Damian Priest's meant to be a heel. Perhaps this is an attempt to turn Finn Balor back babyface. I certainly think he's gained some momentum on the NXT brand, so it'd be interesting to see what they do. But Damian Priest's a guy I really like.
This could be a way of making them, starting a tag team or something. Because you've got Damian Priest, who's a beast anyway, and he looks raw, he is tanked.
Yeah.
You've got Balor, who's the Demon King. why not try to bring something like that back?
Now, Adam Cole has given Velveteen Dream another chance at the belt. Now, obviously, the controversy about him allegedly sending underagers messages he shouldn't have. Hopefully, this means WWE have seen enough evidence that that isn't the case. There's a misunderstanding. Somebody's been hacked, whatever it is. But the segment they did last week, where Velveteen Dream did a big dive off the top rope onto the floor, the thud that you heard then, if Velveteen Dream wasn't hurt, then I'm shocked. So I'm a big fan of those two guys. I think that match will be huge at the In Your House pay per view. They brought back In Your House, which is cool.
Best
But
In Your House 2, lumberjack match, Sid versus Diesel.
see, I liked them when they were the 2 hour long pay per views. I didn't like them when they went to 3 hours and they had, like Canadian Calgary Stampede and all these kind of names. I just didn't enjoy that. One thing I do like, I think I've mentioned this in our group chat, Danny Burch and Oney Larkin as a tag team are very good. Danny Burch has got that Jason Statham performance about him, and I think he's very good. But they're going after Imperium for the tag titles. For me, though, one of the highlights on the NXT storylines is Tommaso Ciampa and Killian Cross, or Karrion Cross. The entrance, it's a great entrance. It just verges a little bit on cheesy when Scarlett Bordeaux starts miming the words to the song. But I think if you cut out her singing along and she just mugs for the camera, that'd be a hell of a good entrance, and will lead to what I think will be the match of the night: Tommaso Ciampa versus Karrion Kross at the pay per view. There's no way that anybody's going to be able to get better than that.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
see, Chelsea Green is Zack Ryder's girlfriend, fiance. This week she fired Robert Stone as her manager. Robert Stone is now pushing the whole idea that he needs new talent and he's going to turn over a new leaf and be a nice guy. That pairing was really good. They played off each other well. So it's going to be interesting to see where they go. They clearly have plans for Chelsea because she's went to TV a lot faster than anybody else. NXT for me is the more exciting brand over AEW and NXT. I do prefer the NXT product, but it's clear to see why AEW have the ratings win because they do have bigger stars. Jon Moxley, Chris Jericho, Jake Hager, MJF, Cody Rhodes. Those names mean more than Oney Larkin, Tommaso Ciampa, and people like that. It's that's just the way it is.
like
But
it's guys that are already established. Like,
yeah, and the thing is,
you've got guys that have already been through there. You've got Jake Roberts. You've got Arn Anderson. Like guys like that who have already been done their time, have come back.
and they can only be helping the young guys backstage as well.
Exactly.
Now, I'm going to throw some quick things at you before we go because we are slowly running out of time. Now, the audience on Raw is now the students at the Performance Center. It's the first time they've actually been in the Performance Center since the lockdown started. They are doing social distancing, but they also have the Perspex screens up like they do in Tesco and other supermarkets are available. But apparently they're not filming Raw. They're filming Raw, Main Event, and SmackDown. So the guys are there for 10 hours. They get given chairs to sit on, but that's a bit of a slog. I mean, is that something you would want to do? Be there because they're not just audience reacting. They're told how to react. They're performing for 10 hours. None of the talent are performing for 10 hours, but the audience is.
Well, I mean, obviously being in the industry that I'm in just now, I'm on my feet for a long haul anyway. So, I mean, it wouldn't really affect me that way. But, I mean, if I'm in the same spot for 10 hours straight, standing up, sitting down, whatever, it's going to get a bit shit.
Yeah, I think it's a step in the right direction because AEW having some audience really did help them. But certainly the audience in WWE being there for 10 hours at a time is probably not going to help them in terms of motivation in the long run. Now, we did mention the Shad Gaspard drowning angle. How do you feel companies should tackle things like that? Do you think the AEW should address it, or do you think they should just go, do you know what? Okay, we screwed up. Let's just be careful.
I think they should address it. They should give out an apology to the family and friends, for doing something so in my opinion, distasteful.
Not even distasteful
And
in the same way as when they mock JR. I mean, it's mocking a dead guy. I mean, that's for
yeah,
me. Like, you can mock somebody who has a chance to reply. If you mock somebody that doesn't get a chance to reply, it's just weird. So Apollo beat Andrade for the US belt. Now, I didn't really mention that when we spoke about Raw because I want to get your opinion about Andrade, who they're apparently building, losing the belt to Apollo. Do you think this leads to the end of Andrade and Zelina's relationship? And Andrade is now going to rise up in the ranks and be perhaps a member of MVP's group?
I think Andrade could be good on his own, but I think he needs a mouthpiece for now. If Selena Vega and him broke up, then I think that basically would just be the end, unless Andrade got another mouthpiece.
I think MVP could be a good one. Certainly, I think that would be a good fit for him because then he could sit just underneath Bobby Lashley. And then eventually, I mean, Andrade's got everything to turn face. So when he does turn face, if he turned face by turning his back on MVP's group, I think that would be huge for him. Now, the one,
I think maybe Heyman would be good.
yeah, do you think Paul Heyman would want to return every week though? I mean, I think anybody that gets Paul Heyman as a mouthpiece is great. But yeah, now what I do want to talk about is something that we briefly mentioned is Nia Jax. So Nia Jax has a history recently of injuring people. She dropped Kairi Sane a few weeks ago, and you could hear Kairi Sane saying, "I'm not ready, I'm not ready," and she still dropped her. Now there's reports that they pre-taped next week's Raw, and there's a segment with Nia versus Kairi Sane again, and Nia has again injured Kairi Sane. Doctors had to get involved. They weren't sure if the match was going to continue, and they're rewarding her with a world title shot. I mean, there are people who say, if you're not in the business, you don't know if somebody's safe or not. But when somebody keeps getting injured, Becky Lynch got injured by her. There's the person who actually injured Alexa Bliss that they blame Ronda Rousey for was Nia Jax. The injuries to Kairi Sane. There's been several spots that shouldn't have happened in recent weeks. So, if you were the booker, how do you handle Nia Jax? Other than with gloves and from a distance.
I wouldn't touch her with a 10-foot barge pole. I would stick her back to developmental, get her trained, get her properly trained, get her to pull her finger out of her arse.
Like, I'm inclined to agree. Have her see and have her working. Obviously, you're relying on the lockdown being lifted so that people can be at the performance center every week. But certainly, I agree. If you're injuring people every week, do you really want to put Asuka in there with Nia Jax and risk losing Becky Lynch and Nia Jax in the space of 4 weeks? Asuka in the space of 4 weeks. For me, it makes no sense why you would do that.
Stick her down to developmental, get her to pull her finger out of her arse, train her properly, let her work.
I agree. I mean, I think when she tore both legs at the same time, and she basically spent her time on social media having a go at people who said that she maybe has to lose weight to look after her legs. Now, I'm not saying she has to lose weight, but one of the key factors in people constantly receiving injuries, like Paul Gascoigne when he was a footballer, when he was at his heaviest, he would pick up muscle injuries more. It's just a fact of life.
Yeah.
So there's too many people
you don't stay up
on
a pub when you're trying to get clear of alcoholism, do you?
Yeah, well, there's people out there who are pissed about Jim Cornette saying, "Why would Becky Lynch fall pregnant when she's at the peak of her money earning abilities? That's something you wouldn't make." I said on last week's show, I actually agree with that. I mean, it makes a lot of sense, but at the same time, if she wants to fall pregnant, we can't question that. That's her call. Money is not important to some people, especially if you already have it. So
exactly, things happen in people's lives that no one can really do anything about, but at the same time, like, I get it, like, she's at the peak of her career. Why would she want this to happen?
But I think people, they're just going to shit on anything Jim Cornette says because it's fun to have a go at the old guy. And even though I don't always agree with what he says, some of the things he says about Donald Trump, it's like, well, you're wrong. And I'm not a Trump fan, but some of the things he says are wrong. Um, but we won't go down that rabbit hole. That's probably an entire special for itself. I'm going to ask one last question before we go. What do you miss about wrestling? Because you've kind of taken a step back from being a weekly watcher.
Yeah.
What do you miss?
I miss going to ICW shows. I miss seeing the live action, like being there, feeling the atmosphere, sweating my tits off, drinking loads of beer, and then getting shit faced afterwards.
Yes. So I agree. So I went to my first ICW show in February, and I do think there's a great atmosphere there. Something you really do want to actually be a part of, even if
And
you are standing
shit wrestlers.
hours. And the wrestling quality is. Now, the perception is that you need to be, worth $1 million to be worth anything in wrestling. But when you go and you see Stevie Boy, you see, Grado, who the response that Grado gets, he doesn't look like a wrestler. When Ricky Page came out, and he got a massive reaction because of his hardcore background. Even Mustache Mountain, when he came out, these people get reactions, and you don't have to be on TV every week. But that forces me to ask this last question before I let you go. What would make you start watching WWE again? Not just bring you back to wrestling. Because you did seem to there was a twinkle in those dark, stormy little eyes when we mentioned the Attitude Era returning. Do you think that's a solution? Or at least an option?
I think ICW's got it right. If they're doing shows at the Hydro, it'll be 18 and over down on the floor, but it'll be 16 up on the balcony. I think WWE should do something like that. Get back to the Attitude Era. Bring something back.
What if they were able to go more sports orientated on Fox, and then Raw, by virtue of its name, just dim the lights, change the presentation, make things. What if things became gritty again? So instead of the camera cuts all being smooth, the music all being played properly, you just let things get a little looser. Like every camera angle is not on point all the time. Sometimes you arrive a second late for a move. Sometimes a move happens and the cameraman goes down like it used to in ECW. Do you think the presentation rather than the product, if that changed, do you think that could elevate things? Because the talent itself is probably better than it's ever been in ring.
I think the talent's lacking a bit. Like Raw and SmackDown talent is, I think, because they're like top notch, like branding. They're thinking, oh, well, we're top of the food chain. Like, why do we need to work for anything? And then you got NXT guys that are like, well, we're getting a chance to do this. We're going to work our asses off. Hence,
do you think that the schedule better than... You think if WWE, because there is talk of them stopping house shows, so if WWE were to go, Raw was 1 day a week, SmackDown's 1 day a week, NXT's 1 day a week, and not do house shows, do you think that would allow them to work a slightly more intense style without damaging their body? Because Tommaso Ciampa's already said there ain't no way he's going to Raw or SmackDown. He'd be retired in a year. So do you think that would help, letting go of house shows, or maybe having house shows with a more rotation-based system? So, Kevin Owens isn't at every show. Maybe you have Kevin Owens paired with, say, Seth Rollins. So Seth does a show, Kevin Owens misses it, then vice versa. And that way, people aren't having to work the schedule that they're working. Because these guys, some of them are working.
Guys.
So, thank you very much for joining me, and hopefully we can have you back for another episode very soon.
Hope so.
Okay. Need to stop recording.
So I'm going to go. If you get over beside the window,